My brother's wife slapped me at the christening. "Stay away from my family, you addict." Everyone gasped, but no one defended me. I'd been sober for 3 years. Then my sponsor stepped out of the crowd. He was a federal judge. He looked at her and said 9 words that changed everything. The slap echoed through the church hall like a gunshot. My sister-in-law Rachel's hand connected with my face so hard my vision blurred. The christening guests went silent. 70 people frozen mid-conversation. Champagne flutes suspended in air, cake plates trembling on linen-covered tables. "Stay away from my family, you addict," Rachel hissed. Her perfectly manicured nails dug crescents into my forearm. "You're not welcome here anymore." My cheek burned. The room tilted. I could feel everyone's eyes on me. The aunts, the cousins, my father's work colleagues, the church ladies who'd organized the whole event. I'd been sober for 3 years. 1,095 days. I attended meetings twice a week at the community center on Maple Street. I had a sponsor I called every Sunday morning. I had a life, a real one, built from scratch after I'd burned the old one to ash. But Rachel still saw the person I used to be. My brother Marcus stood 3 feet behind her, eyes locked on the polished floor. My mother looked away, pretending to examine the flower arrangements, white lilies and baby's breath in crystal vases, probably $200 each from Brighton florists. My father studied his shoes like they held the secrets of the universe. Nobody said a word. "Rachel, I'm sober," I managed. My voice came out smaller than I wanted. "I've been clean for 3 years. I go to meetings. I have a sponsor." "Liar!" She grabbed my purse from where it hung on my chair and dumped it onto the white tablecloth. Lipstick, keys, wallet, receipts, loose change, everything scattered across the linen like evidence at a crime scene. "Let's see what you're really carrying around." Several people gasped. I saw phones come out. Someone's flash went off. Jennifer, my cousin, the one who'd stopped inviting me to girls' nights 2 years ago, had her iPhone aimed directly at us. My hands trembled as I tried to gather my things. A tube of mascara rolled off the table and clattered onto the hardwood floor. My insurance card landed face up. My photo from 4 years ago staring back at me, hollow-eyed, 20 pounds thinner, a ghost. "Nothing?" Rachel's voice dripped with theatrical disappointment. She pawed through my belongings like airport security, picked up my prescription bottle, held it up to the light. "What's this? Xanax?" "Propranolol," I said quietly. My throat felt tight. "For anxiety. Prescribed by Dr. Linda Carmichael, licensed clinical psychologist. It's not a controlled substance. You can check." She did check. Read the label twice, squinted at it. Her jaw tightened when she found nothing suspicious. "You probably left your stash in the car," she said, louder now, playing to the crowd. "That's what addicts do. They hide things. They lie. They get smart about it." I'd worked so hard. 3 years of therapy with Dr. Linda Carmichael, 12 years in practice, office on Riverside Drive, $180 per session that I paid myself from my library assistant salary. 3 years of rebuilding trust, one kept promise at a time. 3 years of showing up to every family event, sober, punctual, present. 3 years of birthday cards and phone calls and proof that I was different now. None of it mattered. The thing about addiction is that your worst day becomes your permanent identity. It doesn't matter that I'd been clean for 3 years. What mattered was the day I stole $200 from Marcus's wallet to buy pills. What mattered was missing my nephew Ethan's first birthday because I was passed out in a Super 8 motel room in Bakersfield, too high to remember my own name. What mattered was the night I called my mother at 3 a.m., incoherent and begging for money. That was who I was to them, forever. Marcus had married Rachel 4 years ago, right in the middle of my using. She'd watched me spiral. She'd watched me steal, lie, disappear for days. She'd watched Marcus cry after I'd taken his money. She'd held him when he said he didn't recognize his sister anymore. She'd driven him to my apartment that night when I'd overdosed the first time, when the EMTs had to use 2 doses of Narcan to bring me back. I understood her fear, but understanding it didn't make it hurt less. "Sarah's done everything she needs to do," Marcus finally said. His voice was weak, uncertain, like a child asking permission. "She's been sober for 3 years. She paid me back the money." "With whose money?" Rachel whipped around, her red dress swirling. "Valentino, probably. She only wore expensive things. Probably stole it from someone else. That's the cycle. They just move from victim to victim." My Aunt Margaret, Dad's sister, spoke up from table 6. She was 68, retired principal, the family matriarch since Grandma died. "Rachel has a point. My neighbor's son was an addict. Stole from everyone. Died last year. You can't trust them. Ever," added someone else. I turned and saw it was Uncle Jerry, Dad's brother. He was looking at me with something like disgust. The murmurs spread. Agreement, nodding heads. My cousin Jennifer whispered something to her husband Brad. He glanced at me and frowned, then whispered back. Jennifer nodded vigorously. I felt myself shrinking, disappearing, becoming invisible again. "Maybe we should check her car," Jennifer said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "If she's really clean, she won't mind." A few people murmured agreement. "That's a good idea," Rachel said, her eyes lighting up like she'd just won something. "Marcus, go check her car." "What?" "No," Marcus held up his hands. "That's too far. If she has nothing to hide, it shouldn't be a problem." Rachel turned to me, her smile sharp as broken glass. "Right, Sarah. You don't mind, do you?" Every eye in the room was on me. If I said no, I looked guilty. If I said yes, I was submitting to public humiliation, letting them violate my privacy, my dignity, everything. I mind, I said quietly. That's my private property. See? Rachel turned to the crowd like a prosecutor addressing a jury. She won't let us check, because she's hiding something. I'm not hiding anything. My voice cracked. I deserve basic respect. You deserve what you've earned, Rachel said coldly. And you've earned suspicion. My mother approached Rachel, her voice low and placating. She was wearing her pearls, the ones Grandma left her, the ones she only wore to important events. Maybe we should take this outside. The baby's christening. This should be a happy day. No, Rachel's voice was steel. Everyone needs to hear this. Everyone needs to know what she is, what she'll always be. She turned back to me, her eyes bright with righteous fury. You're not holding Lily, she said. Each word was a hammer blow. You're not going anywhere near my daughter. Not today, not ever. I don't want your addict hands touching my baby. That one hit different. I'd driven 3 hours to be here, left at 5:30 in the morning to avoid traffic on the 405. I'd bought a gift, a sterling silver rattle from Tiffany's, $240 that I'd saved for 2 months. I'd bought a new dress from Nordstrom because my old clothes didn't fit anymore, because I'd gained back the healthy weight I'd lost. Navy blue, conservative, appropriate. $120 on sale. I'd practiced what I'd say to Rachel, how I'd stay calm, how I'd prove I could be trusted, and she was banning me from holding my own niece. Rachel, please, I said. My voice broke. Tears were coming and I couldn't stop them. I just want to be part of the family again. I've worked so hard. You worked hard? Her laugh was sharp, cruel. You want credit for not being a junkie? That's the bare minimum of being human, Sarah. You don't get a medal for functioning like a normal person. You don't get praise for not stealing from us. The room temperature seemed to drop. Someone's phone was definitely recording now. I could see it. Jennifer's husband, Brad, holding his iPhone at chest level, camera pointed directly at us, recording my humiliation for posterity, for Facebook, for the family group chat. Great. I think Sarah should leave, my Aunt Margaret announced, standing up. Her voice was firm, final. This is supposed to be a celebration, a christening. We shouldn't have to deal with this. With what? I heard myself ask. With me? I'm sober. I'm clean. I've done everything right for 3 years. 3 years isn't enough, Uncle Jerry called out. He was 3 beers deep, I could tell. His face was flushed. My buddy Jerry, different Jerry. His daughter was clean for 5 years. 5 years. Then she relapsed and died. Found her in a Walmart bathroom. You're always one bad day away. Several people nodded. You're still an addict, Rachel said, stepping closer. I could smell her perfume. Chanel No. 5, the expensive one, probably $150 a bottle. You'll always be an addict. You'll always be one bad day away from destroying everything. I won't let you poison my children the way you poisoned this family. The christening guests murmured agreement. Some nodded. Others looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Their silence heavy as stones dropped in deep water. My father cleared his throat. For a moment, one brief, stupid moment, I thought he might defend me. Maybe it would be better if you left, sweetheart, he said quietly, not looking at me, looking at the floor, at the walls, anywhere but my face. We can talk about this later, when everyone's calmer. Later, I repeated. My voice sounded hollow. We've been saying later for 3 years. Because we need time. Rachel's voice rose, cracking with emotion. Real emotion now, not performance. My sister died from an overdose 2 years ago. 2 years, Sarah. I found her in her bathtub with a needle in her arm and foam coming out of her mouth. So forgive me if I don't trust your 3 years sober story. Addicts always relapse. Always. It's just a matter of time. The room went completely silent. I hadn't known that. About her sister. About the bathtub. Marcus had mentioned it once, briefly, but I didn't know Rachel had been the one to find her. I'm sorry, I said, meaning it. I didn't know you were the one who— Of course you didn't know, because you only think about yourself. Rachel's eyes were wet now, mascara starting to run. You think about your sobriety, your meetings, your recovery. But what about us? What about the people you traumatized? What about Marcus, who had to watch his sister disappear? What about your parents, who didn't sleep for 2 years because they thought every phone call would be the hospital saying you were dead? My throat closed. What about the night you called your mother at 3 a.m., so high you couldn't speak in full sentences, and she thought you were dying? Rachel continued. What about the time you stole pain medication from your grandmother while she was dying of cancer? Remember that, Sarah? Grandma with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and you stole her morphine? I'd forgotten about that. No, that's a lie. I hadn't forgotten. I'd tried to forget. I'd buried it so deep I almost convinced myself it didn't happen. But it did happen. Grandma had been in hospice. The morphine was in her bedside drawer. She'd been sleeping. I'd taken 3 pills. Just 3. She'd had plenty left. I told myself she wouldn't notice. She noticed. You stole from a dying woman, Rachel said, her voice shaking. Your own grandmother. The woman who raised you when your parents were working. The woman who taught you to bake cookies and read you stories. And you stole her pain medication while she was dying. The room was staring at me now with something worse than anger. Disgust. Horror. Confirmation of everything they'd suspected. I paid her back, I whispered. Before she died, I told her I was sorry. She forgave me. Did she? Rachel's voice was acid. Or did she say she forgave you because she was dying and she didn't want to spend her last days angry? There's a difference, Sarah. Sarah. I had no answer for that. You want back in? Rachel continued. You want us to pretend everything's fine? To trust you around our children? It's not fine. It'll never be fine. You can't undo what you did. You can't unsteal that money. You can't unbreak Marcus's heart. You can't give Grandma back the dignity you took from her. I know, I whispered. I know I can't, but I'm trying. Trying isn't enough. She said it so finally, so absolutely, like a door slamming shut, like a coffin closing. I started gathering my things, hands shaking so badly I could barely hold my keys. The mascara tube had rolled under the table. I got on my hands and knees to retrieve it, my face burning with humiliation as 70 people watched me crawl across the floor in my $120 Nordstrom dress. When I stood up, Rachel was still staring at me with that mixture of rage and pain and fear. Go, she said quietly. Please just go. I turned toward the exit. My purse was still half open. Things were falling out. My wallet hit the floor. I bent to pick it up and my keys fell. When I grabbed the keys, a pen rolled away. I was falling apart in real time. Here, Marcus finally moved, bent down, started helping me gather my things. His hands were shaking too. Don't, Rachel said sharply. Marcus froze, looked at his wife, looked at me, looked at the floor. Then he stood up and stepped back, away from me, choosing her. I finished gathering my things alone, shoved everything into my purse. The clasp was broken now. Rachel had damaged it when she'd dumped everything out. Another thing I'd have to fix. Another thing that was ruined. I walked toward the exit, past table 6, where Aunt Margaret sat with her arms crossed, past table 3, where Jennifer was still recording on her phone, past the cake table with its 3-tiered christening cake, white fondant with pink roses, probably $400 from Sweet Dreams Bakery, past all of it. Then someone moved through the crowd. A man in a dark charcoal suit, silver hair combed neatly back, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, distinguished in that quiet way that comes from decades of earned authority. Thomas, my sponsor. I'd invited him 3 weeks ago when I sent out the christening invitations, but I didn't think he'd actually come. He usually kept our relationship private. That's how AA worked. Anonymity first, no exceptions. But here he was, walking calmly through 70 people like Moses, parting the Red Sea. Excuse me, Thomas said. His voice was measured, calm, but it commanded the room instantly. I couldn't help overhearing this conversation. Rachel turned, irritation flashing across her face. And you are? Thomas Brennan. He extended his hand with old-fashioned courtesy. She didn't take it. I'm Sarah's AA sponsor. I've worked with her for the past 3 years. Great, Rachel said, her voice dripping sarcasm. Another addict. That's exactly what this family needs. A few people laughed nervously. My face burned hotter. Actually, Thomas said calmly, reaching into his jacket pocket, I'm a federal judge. He pulled out his wallet and showed her his credentials, the official ID card with the seal of the United States District Court, Southern District of California. Judge Thomas Brennan. I've been sober for 22 years. The room shifted instantly. You could feel it. The air pressure changing. People straightening their spines. Phones lowering slightly. Rachel's confidence faltered. Her mouth opened, closed. That's nice for you, but this is a family matter. I've watched Sarah rebuild her life from the ground up, Thomas continued, his tone conversational but carrying the weight of someone who'd spent decades making life-altering decisions from a bench. She's attended over 300 AA meetings in 3 years. That's twice the recommended frequency. She's sponsored 2 other women through their early recovery, Jennifer Park and Dana Williams. Both are sober today because of her guidance. She volunteers at a crisis hotline every Tuesday night from 6 p.m. to midnight. That's the Riverside Crisis Center on Atlantic Boulevard. My throat tightened. I didn't know he'd been keeping track. I didn't know he noticed. She also filed paperwork with the court system 6 months ago, Thomas said. A formal request to make amends through community service. Quite unusual, actually. Most people in recovery make private amends, but Sarah wanted it documented, official, accountable. I reviewed it personally when it came across my desk. Coincidence, perhaps, but Southern California's legal community isn't as large as you'd think. Marcus's head snapped up. She did what? 200 hours of service at the Riverside Youth Addiction Center, Thomas said, looking at me with something that might have been pride. Teaching life skills classes to teenagers in recovery. She's already completed 143 hours. I've seen the supervisor reports. They're glowing. He pulled out his phone, scrolled for a moment, then read aloud. Sarah demonstrates exceptional empathy and practical wisdom. She connects with our kids in ways our professional staff often can't. She's exactly the kind of mentor our teenagers need. She shows them that recovery is possible, that life after addiction can be full and meaningful. I wish we had 10 more volunteers like her. That's from Jennifer Morrison, 15 years in addiction counseling, director of the youth program. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. She looked at me like she'd never seen me before. Sarah has done everything right, Thomas said, his voice still calm but gaining an edge. She's faced her mistakes head on. She's made financial restitution. I believe she paid back the money she stole with interest, didn't she, Sarah? I nodded, not trusting my voice. Every penny, $200 to Marcus, plus $50 extra, and I replaced Grandma's medication before she died. I told her what I'd done. I apologized. She said she forgave me. She did forgive you, my mother said suddenly. Her voice was thick. She told me, 2 days before she died. She said, Sarah came clean. 17. She's trying. That takes courage. Thomas nodded. Sarah's built a life of service and accountability, he continued. She shows up. She does the work. She helps other people stay sober even when her own sobriety is hard. That's character. He turned to face Rachel directly. His voice stayed calm, but something steel entered it. The tone of a man who'd sentenced criminals, presided over trials, seen every variety of human behavior. What you just did, physically assaulting someone in recovery, dumping their belongings in public, calling them a liar in front of 70 witnesses, that has legal implications. Rachel went pale. As a federal judge, I'm familiar with both civil and criminal law, Thomas said. His voice remained conversational, almost gentle. That made it more terrifying somehow. People in recovery are protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act, Section 12101. Substance use disorder is classified as a disability. What I just witnessed constitutes discriminatory harassment based on a documented disability. That's actionable under both federal and state law. He pulled out his phone. I've just documented this incident with a time-stamped note, Thomas said, his thumb moving across his phone screen. Date, time, location, witnesses present. If Sarah chooses to press charges for assault, and yes, that slap was assault under California Penal Code Section 240, I'll provide a sworn statement as an eyewitness. I'll also be happy to testify about Sarah's character, her 3-year commitment to recovery, and her exemplary conduct. The room was dead silent now. You could have heard a pin drop on carpet. Rachel's face drained of color. Marcus looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. My Aunt Margaret had gone very still, her champagne flute frozen halfway to her mouth. My father, who hadn't said anything useful during the entire confrontation, suddenly found his voice. Rachel, he said quietly, I think you owe Sarah an apology. I don't, Rachel started. Now, my father said, in a tone I hadn't heard since I was 16 and came home 3 hours past curfew. Thomas looked at Rachel with the calm, patient expression of someone who'd spent decades waiting for people to make better choices. 9 words, he said quietly, his voice dropping to something soft and dangerous. That's all you need. I'm sorry for hitting you. That was wrong. 9 words, and I suggest you choose them very carefully, because this room is full of witnesses. Several people are recording, and I'm a federal judge who just watched you commit assault. The silence stretched. Rachel looked around the room, at the guests watching, at Marcus's stricken face, at my parents, at Thomas's unwavering gaze, at Jennifer's husband Brad still recording on his phone, at Aunt Margaret, who was now looking at Rachel with something like disapproval, at Uncle Jerry, who'd gone quiet, at the church ladies who'd organized the event, who were whispering to each other. Finally, she looked at me. I'm sorry for hitting you, she said stiffly, each word forced out like a confession. That was wrong. 9 words exactly. Thomas nodded once. Thank you. He turned to me, his expression softening. Sarah, would you like to press charges? Every eye in the room was on me now, waiting. 70 people holding their breath. I thought about it. I really did. I thought about the 3 years of humiliation, the family dinners where I sat at the kids' table because no one trusted me with the adults, the Christmas where Rachel hid her purse every time I walked into a room, the Thanksgiving where she'd watched me like a hawk every time I went near the wine. I thought about tonight, the slap, the dumped purse, the public humiliation, the accusations, the crawling on the floor to retrieve my mascara. But I also thought about my nephew Ethan, 2 years old now, laughing in his high chair. I thought about my niece Lily, the baby being christened today, wearing the gown my grandmother had worn 60 years ago, the same grandmother I'd stolen from, the grandmother who'd forgiven me. No, I said quietly, I don't want to press charges. Thomas studied me for a moment, then nodded. Your choice. But if anything like this happens again, anything at all, you call me immediately. Understood? Understood. He touched my shoulder briefly, a gesture of solidarity, then turned to address the room one final time. Recovery is hard enough without being attacked by the people who should be celebrating your victories, Thomas said. His voice carried to every corner of the church hall, every table, every witness. Sarah has earned her sobriety every single day for 1,095 days. She's earned the right to be here. She's earned the right to be treated with basic human dignity. She's earned the right to be part of this family. He paused. Let the words settle. I hope you'll all remember that. Then he looked at me, smiled slightly, and walked out of the church hall. The silence that followed was deafening. Then my mother crossed the room, wrapped me in a hug so tight I could barely breathe. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry I didn't stand up for you. Marcus came next. Sarah, don't, I said. Not now. He nodded, stepped back. Rachel stood alone near the cake table, her face unreadable. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. I picked up my broken purse, held it together with both hands, and I walked out with my head high. 3 years and counting, one day at a time.